So hi, everyone. It's Naomi Wolf, and I am so happy to be talking to you tonight. I think we can really use a reading from the Geneva Bible because of the events around the world. And before I begin, I just want to, not kind of making a political statement of any kind, just reminding everyone that this story, the story of Abraham and his family, is the story of all the Abrahamic religions that descend from this family. So we're starting with chapter 4 of Exodus in the Geneva Bible. You remember what this looks like. You remember what the text looks like. Really very dense with those side notes, which were so revolutionary. The Founders Bible, the Puritans Bible, a Bible that absolutely reformed Europeans' sense of their relationship to God. And if you've been following this set of readings, that I believe that the dramatic mistranslations that we're seeing in later and modern versions of the same text really went a long way to kind of distance human beings from God, because in the original Hebrew, which we'll look at, and also in the Geneva Bible, the personality of the Lord, God, Yahweh, is dramatically more intimate and engaged and kind of present with human beings than later translations represent him to be. And there's some more examples here that I'll show you in Exodus 4. So you recall that Moses had been saved from the massacre that Pharaoh had decreed for the firstborn sons of the children of Israel. He'd been hidden in a bulrush in the last chapter. The daughter of Pharaoh had found him and rescued him and had given him back to his mom to raise, which, as you recall, showed that no matter what people plan, God has his own plans. And then Moses grew up to be an adult man. He saw an Egyptian mistreating an Israelite, and he killed him and buried him in the sand and fled. And then we saw in the last chapter that God spoke to him out of a burning bush. So now we're picking up again. And in the last chapter, God had instructed the children of Israel to get get ready, get the jewels that they could from around themselves to prepare to leave Egypt and their house of bondage. But they haven't done that yet. So here we go. This is chapter 4. And the introduction says, Moses' rod is turned into a serpent. His hand is leprous. The water of the river is turned into blood. Aaron is given to help Moses. God hardens Pharaoh. His wife circumcises her son. Aaron meets with Moses, and they come to the Israelites and are believed. So this is a chapter about belief, because the task of Moses and Aaron, who will help him, is to get the children of Israel to believe that Moses really did have an experience of God revealing himself to Moses with instructions, and that's the challenge. So then Moses answered and said, meaning answered God, and said, but lo, they will not believe me, nor hearken unto my voice, for they will say, the Lord has not appeared unto thee. And the note says, God bears with Moses doubting, because he was not altogether without faith, meaning Moses wasn't. And the Lord said unto him, what is in thy hand? And he answered, a rod. Then said he, cast it on the ground. So he cast it on the ground, and it was turned into a serpent, and Moses fled from it. Again the Lord said unto Moses, put forth thine hand, your hand, and take it by the tail. Then he put forth his hand and caught it, and it was turned into a rod in his hand. Do this, that they may believe that the Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzchak, and the God of Yaakov, has appeared unto you. And I'm changing the these and thine into you and yours. And the note says, this power to work miracles was to confirm his doctrine and to assure him of his vocation, to reassure Moses that he was really on the right track. And the Lord said furthermore unto him, thrust now your hand into your bosom. And he thrust his hand into his bosom. And when he took it out again, behold, his hand was leprous as snow. It was white as snow, like leprosy. Moreover, he said, put your hand into your bosom again. So he, Moses, put his hand into his bosom again and plucked it out of his bosom. And behold, it was turned again as his other flesh. It was exactly the same as the rest of his flesh. So shall it be if they will not believe you, neither obey the voice of the first sign, yet shall they believe for the voice of the second sign. And the note says, or the words confirmed by the first sign. But if they will not yet believe these two signs, neither will they obey unto your voice, then shall you take of the water of the river and pour it upon the dry land. So the water which you shall take out of the river shall be turned to blood upon the dry land. And the note says, because these three signs should be sufficient witnesses to prove that Moses should deliver God's people. This should be enough to persuade them. But Moses said unto the Lord, O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither at any time have been, nor yet since you have spoken unto your servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue. This guy just won't do what God is asking him to do. He's like, I'm not very eloquent. And some biblical scholars have interpreted that as Moses saying that he has a stutter, a stammer. I am slow of speech and slow of tongue. Then the Lord said unto him, who has given the mouth to man, or who has made the dumb or the deaf, or him that sees or the blind? Have not I the Lord? Therefore, thus, go now, and I will be with your mouth, and I will teach you what you will say. But he said, O my Lord, send, I pray you, by the hand of him whom you should send. Like there's all this second guessing. Remember, Abraham did this. People are always trying to kind of talk God out of what God wants to do. But I think what's really striking to me about this translation and the Hebrew is that they have this relationship where it's like, oh, here's God. I'm just going to try to argue God out of whatever God is planning because I have a better idea. It's very, very, very intimate and informal and close. If annoying, no doubt to God. Then the Lord was very angry with Moses and said, do not I know Aaron, your brother, the Levite, that he himself shall speak? For lo, he comes also forth to meet you. And when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. God is like, okay, I'm choosing you, Moses. You're saying you're not qualified for the job. You're asking me to consider Aaron for the job instead. I'm God. I know who Aaron is. I made him. I made people who are deaf. I made people who are mute, who can't speak at all. I made people who can see. I know all of this. Stop trying to tell me, things I have already figured out because I created everything. It's actually quite funny in a way. Therefore you will speak unto him and put these words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you what you ought to do. And he shall be your spokesman unto the people. He shall be as your mouth, and you shall be to him as God, meaning you will be to him as if God is speaking. You'll communicate my words, is what God is saying. Moreover, now take this rod in your hand, wherewith you will do miracles. And the notes are very interesting. They say, when Moses is saying, send the person whom you should send, the note says, that is of the Messiah, or some other that is more meet, more suitable than I. And the note says, though we provoke God justly to anger, yet he will never reject his. So the note acknowledges that they're having an argument and that God is being patient with Moses. And you shall do miracles, meaning as a wise counselor and full of God's spirit. All right. Moreover, you shall take this rod in your hand, wherewith you will do miracles. Therefore, thus, as a result, Moses went and returned to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said unto him, I pray you, let me go and return to my brethren, my brothers, which are in Egypt, and see whether they be yet alive. Then Jethro said to Moses, go in peace. For the Lord had said unto Moses in Midian, go, return to Egypt, for they are all dead, which went about to kill thee, to kill you. They're all dead who had sought to kill you when you had to flee Egypt. Then Moses took his wife and his sons and put them on an ass, on a donkey, and returned toward the land of Egypt. And Moses took the rod of God in his hand. And the Lord said unto Moses, when you are entered and come into Egypt again, see that you do all the wonders before Pharaoh, which I have put in your hand. But I will harden his heart, and he shall not let the people go. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. And the note says, by retaining my spirit and delivering him unto Satan to increase his malice. So the note is saying this is kind of an example of Satan being kind of introduced into the narrative for God's purposes. Interesting. Wherefore, as a result, I say to you, let my son go that he may serve me. If you refuse to let him go, behold, I will slay your son, even your firstborn. And as he was by the way in the inn, the Lord met him and would have killed him. And this is such an interesting aside that I've never paid attention to before. Then Zipporah, his wife, took a sharp knife and cut away the foreskin of her son and cast it at his feet and said, you are indeed a bloody husband unto me. So he departed from him. Then she said, O bloody husband, because of the circumcision. And the note says, God punished with sickness for neglecting his sacrament. And then it says, this act was extraordinary, for Moses was sore sick, very sick, and God even then required it. So it looks like God is requiring Moses, who is sick, to be circumcised, and that Zipporah circumcised her own son instead and threw the foreskin at Moses's feet. And honestly, I don't really understand the importance of this. I'll have to look into it. Then the Lord said unto Aaron, go meet Moses in the wilderness. And he went and met him in the mount of God and kissed him. Then Moses told Aaron all the words of the Lord who had sent him and all the signs wherewith he had charged him, meaning all the miracles that he had tasked him with performing. So went Moses and Aaron and gathered all the elders of the children of Israel, and Aaron told all the words which the Lord had spoken unto Moses, and he did the miracles in the sight of the people. And the people believed. And when they heard that the Lord had visited the children of Israel and had looked upon their tribulation, they bowed down and worshiped. And the note says, so that Moses had now experience of God's promise that he should have good success. So that's the Geneva Bible. So there's some very interesting, you know what I'm going to say, changes in the Revised Standard Version, which is the popular, frequently used modern Catholic version. So, and again, as I always say, no disrespect to Catholics, it's just an example of a typical, very widely used modern translation. So it's Exodus 4. Let's see what are some of the things I've highlighted here. Obey your voice. If they will not believe even these two signs or heed your voice, God is saying to Moses here. And the Hebrew actually says, obey your voice. So this is an example, and let's see what it actually says in Hebrew. Here we always do this. And I'm sorry, it's just funny when I pass, Moses arguing with God and God, being patient with him. So the Hebrew says, and it will come to pass, Vaye imlo ya'aminu gam, and it will come to pass if they don't believe, gam lishne ha et otot, even to the two signs, ha'ele, these, velo yishme'un, and they don't listen, le kolecha, and they don't listen to your voice. So in Hebrew, it says, if they don't listen to your voice. In the Chabad translation, it says, if they don't heed your voice. In the Holy Bible, it says, if they don't heed your voice. And in the Geneva Bible, it says, hearken unto my voice. So it's close enough. But it's a little different. I mean, how can I put it? In Hebrew, it's literally listen. Like the voice of Moses is literally speaking for the voice of God. It's not about, oh, Moses is kind of advising or leading on a human level. It's literally, they need to listen to you because you're articulating God's voice. All right, let's see some other changes. I love it. When they're arguing and the Lord says to Moses, who has made man's mouth, who makes him dumb or deaf or seeing or blind? The Revised Standard Version says, is it not I, the Lord? And that's really interesting. Let's see what the Hebrew Bible says. The Hebrew Bible says, have not I the Lord? It says, who has given the mouth to man, or who has made the dumb, meaning the mute, or the deaf, or him that sees, or the blind? Have not I the Lord? So in the Geneva Bible, it's like, I made all these people. And in the actual Hebrew, it says, Vayomer, and he said, Adonai, God, elav, to him, me sam, who put pe la'adam, a mouth to the human being, to the man. And remember, Adam means human, and it's also Adam, the first name of the human being, which meant human. Who put the mouth to the human? It's so concrete, an image of, God actually shaping Adam or human beings and putting the mouth on. Who put the mouth there? Moses is saying, I'm slow of speech, I'm not eloquent. And God is like, I made your mouth, like I did that. Like, remember who I am. O mi yasum, or who put ilem, or who put the dumb, the mute, o cheresh, or the deaf, o pikeach, o iver, or seeing or blind. Iver means blind. Hello is kind of like, really, or it behold, or like witness. Anochi, and Anochi is an intensifier of Ani. Ani means I, so Anochi is like really me. Anochi Adonai. So in Hebrew it says, behold, I am the God. I am God. Who did all these things? Behold, I am God. So it's even stronger than, is it not I, the Lord, which is the Revised Standard Version. And it's stronger than, every translation into the English. It's stronger than, have not I, the Lord. In the actual Hebrew, it's this intimate friendship in which God is saying to Moses, I made all this stuff. It's me. It's God. That's what it's like. It's like, hey, dude, it's me. It's God here. It's really like that. It's got that resonance in Hebrew. And the other translations, in my view, again, distance God from people. And then the last thing I want to look at a little bit is the Revised Standard Version says, he shall speak for you to the people, and he shall be a mouth for you. And in the Hebrew, it's more like, he shall be as your mouth. And then the Revised Standard Version says, and you shall be to him as God. Let's see what it actually says in the Hebrew. Here it is. Ve'yedabarta elav, and remember this word diber or dever or dibur. It's to speak, but a dibur can also mean a speech or a saying. V'dibarta, and he said to him, Vesamta, and you shall put et hadvarim, listen to that echo of dever, dvarim, the words, befiv, in his mouth, ve'anochi, again, that intensified I, and I, really me, I, God, eye im pich, and it's so intimate and strong, I will be with your mouth. Ve'im pihu, and with his mouth, that's, literally, and with his mouth, meaning Aaron's mouth, that horiti etchem, and I will, le'arot is to show or to reveal. It's the same root as ro'eh, which is to see. So it's, I will demonstrate etchem, and it's, to you. I will demonstrate at you almost, et asher te'asun, that which you will do. So it's just like unbelievably, I just keep saying unbelievably close, unbelievably close. It's like, don't even worry, because I will be with your mouth. Remember, we've run into this before when God is expressing to human beings what his relationship to them is. It's like, why are you even worrying? Because I am alongside you. I am within you. I made your mouth. I will, you're worrying about what you're going to say. I will be putting the words into your mouth, like, stop worrying. We are this close. And it's very hard to translate this into English, because certainly into, kind of English translations of the Bible, because this concept of God being so intimate that there's really no boundary between God and human beings really does not exist in English. But that's really the what the Hebrew is saying. I will put the words in your mouth. And you will put the words into his mouth. And so there's this like chain of God putting the words into Moses, Moses putting the words into Aaron, and then Aaron bringing the words to the people. So, and you shall be to him as God. And so this is very interesting. V'diberhu, and he said, and again, that echo of dever, davar, diber, lecha, to him, el ha'am, to the people, ve'hayahu, and it will be to him, yeyelecha, lefe, he will be to you a mouth, ve'ata to yelo, and you will be to him le Elohim, to God. So it's not this, I would say this is a mistranslation in the Revised Standard Version. They're saying, you shall be to him as God. It's a little bit of a creepy mistranslation. It's like Moses is as God to Aaron. It again is this example which constantly happens in modern translations of elevating the middleman, elevating the priest, elevating the leader, the human leader, the mediator between God and human beings. And that's really not what this says in Hebrew. It really says, Tiye lo le Elohim, you will be to him to God. In other words, you will be to him, oriented to God so that you can communicate to him God's will. So it doesn't say you'll be to him God. If it said that, the Hebrew would be Tielo Elohim. And it doesn't say that. It says Tielo le Elohim. Le means to. So, I'm just chalking that up as one of many, many, many mistranslations that elevates the middleman and makes God more distant. Another example I'm going to share with you is in Exodus 4:21. The Lord said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you do before Pharaoh all the miracles which I've put in your power. Let's see what that is in the Hebrew. And it's not in your power. In Hebrew, it's the Lord said to Moses, when you go to Egypt, see all the signs that I've placed in your hand. Veyomar, and he said, Adonai, God, El Moshe, to Moses, Belechetecha, in your going, lashuv Mitzrayma, when you return to Egypt, Mitzrayim is Egypt. Re'eh, you remember that root, ro'eh, mar'eh, to demonstrate, to see. Re'eh, see, al hamfatim, the signs, asher samti, which I have placed, beyadecha, in your hand, and do them, asitam lifnei Pharaoh, and do them in front of Pharaoh. So it's literally in your hand. And I just want to stress that because God is putting miracles, and while it's translated as signs, it's actually a more interesting word than signs in Hebrew. It's ot, which is like a symbol. So it's more than a sign. It also like represents something, but it's not God saying, okay, I've put my power in you like a priest, and now you have power. He's not saying that. He's literally saying, these are my signs, my miracles. I'm God. I made you, right? Not in a mean way, but just like, I'm your mom, I'm your dad. Like, there's not this, you're not old enough to drive the car. And he's putting the miracles and the signs in Moses's hand. And to me, it's very different than saying, in your power, which is what the Revised Standard Version says, because it's not Moses's power. It's not. It's God's power, which is in Moses's hands. An interesting other mistranslation is that everyone translates, "I will harden his heart" about Moses. I mean, that's in like like blues songs. I mean, it's so much part of our culture. But the Hebrew is actually, I will strengthen his heart. ועשיתם לפני פרעה, ואני אחזק את ליבו, and I will, chazak is strong, I will strengthen et libo. Et is again that article, it's like the, but not quite the, there's nothing like it in English. Libo, his heart. Ve'lo yishlach et ha'am, and he will not send the people, he won't let the people go. And then there's this very, very intimate thing where God is saying, and God said this earlier to Moses, my firstborn son is Israel. Bnei Bechori Yisrael. So I just want you to pay attention to this, because he's not saying his only son is Israel. And I think it's an important moment to notice this in the world. God may have lots and lots and lots and lots of kids. God obviously does have lots and lots of kids because God created everybody in this story, but it's his firstborn. So your firstborn isn't more beloved or more important than any other child. But in this culture, the firstborn does have certain responsibilities and a certain role. So it's a super intimate description that God is giving. This is my firstborn. My firstborn son is Israel. And you're going to see a mirror of this statement of love and connection from God later when the firstborn sons of the Egyptians are slaughtered later on in the story by the angel of death. And that's one of many kind of mirroring moments, the most not the most dear, but the most kind of symbolically important of the children, the firstborn son. So that is the summary. But the last mistranslation, this is funny. Remember that Zipporah took the flint and circumcised her son's foreskin. Well, in the Geneva Bible, she threw it at the feet of, she cut away the foreskin of her son and cast it at his feet, and he threw it at his feet and said, "You are indeed a bloody husband unto me." Very dramatic. So in the Hebrew, it says "vetikach," and she took Tzipporah, and remember that means bird. It's his wife Tzipporah. Tser vetichrot et arlet bna vetig'a leraglav, and she threw it to his feet. Vetomer, and she said, "Ki chatan damim," because you are a bridegroom of bloods, atali, you are to me. And so she's throwing this bloody foreskin, at his feet in the Hebrew. In the Revised Standard Version, the popular Catholic version, it's much scaled back. It says, then Zipporah took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin and touched Moses's feet with it and said, surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me. So there's no touching going on here. She flung it at him, at his feet. And it's a very dramatic scene in the original. Hard to understand. Again, as I said, I'll have to look into it more and tell you more about it when I understand it more. But I think it's just really stressing the early, commandment of circumcision, which really distinguished the children of Israel from the tribes around them, and which, God really said early on absolutely clearly is a categorical commandment, to identify his chosen people. And so the last thing is that in the Hebrew, how does it end? Aaron spoke and he performed the signs before the eyes of people, and the people believed, and they heard that the Lord had remembered the children of Israel and that he saw their affliction, and they kneeled and prostrated themselves. So this is a very strong conclusion. They weren't believing. They're stuck in slavery. This random guy is coming up and saying, I'm going to take you away from slavery, all the things, the flesh pots of Egypt, meaning the, abundant food we have here, even though we're enslaved. And I'm going to take you into the desert because God told me to. And you can imagine they will not be receptive to that message. So this is a super important climactic moment where they're believing. Aaron helped out. He demonstrated the signs, the miracles. And it says, V'ya'amen, and they believed. Emunah is belief. Lehamin is to believe. Ha'am, the people. V'yishme'ehu, and they heard. V'yishme'u, and they heard. Ki pakad Adonai, because God committed et bnei, the children of Israel, and that he saw, remember, ro'eh, lirot, mar'eh, demonstrate, see, ra'a et aniyam, he saw their oni is poverty. He saw their poverty. He saw their suffering. Ve yikdu v'yishtachavu. And they kneeled and prostrated themselves, like the way that Muslims do, like kneeled right down and went right down and bowed down. And that's a big deal in Judaism, because you're really not supposed to bow even your head to a king or a ruler, or certainly no other god or idol. You're only supposed to bow down to God. But the people are not just like, oh, interesting, that's persuasive, I'll bow my head and worship you. It's like, okay, God is seeing, we believe God is seeing our poverty, our misery. We are witnessed, he's not abandoning us. We're going to be saved. It's going to be okay. And then they literally, it's so emotional, kneel and are like completely prostrate, flat down, like, the way you see in a Muslim prayer service. So how is this translated in the Roman Catholic popular version? And the people believed. And when they heard that the Lord had visited the people of Israel, and that he had visited, it's not visited, they heard that the Lord had remembered. I'll get to that. Pakad is the word. And that he had seen their affliction, they bowed their heads and worshiped. And it just doesn't say that. It doesn't say they bowed their heads. It doesn't say they worshiped. It's like they got right down and they just like gave themselves to God, who was seeing their poverty. So the last word I want to talk to you about, which is, I would say, mistranslated, is pakad. Now we've run into this word pakad before. It's an amazing word, but it's very hard to translate. I just translated it as committed, that God, ki pakad Adonai, because God committed himself, et bnei Israel, toward the children of Israel. Well, it's like, Mifaked is someone in the army who is a commander, right? it's someone who has like a duty of care or a responsibility. Lifaked is also, we've talked about it being like a covenant or an agreement, a contract almost. That it's like if you take in an orphan, that is, pakat, you've made a kind of life commitment. So that's the resonance of that. And the Revised Standard Version really waters that down to God visited the children, that they believed that God had visited the children of Israel, so they bowed their heads and worshiped. That's not what the Hebrew says. The Hebrew says that God was like, okay, these are my kids. This is my firstborn. This people are like my children, and they are my children. I'm gonna remember them. I'm gonna see them. I'm gonna witness their suffering, and I'm committed to them. I can't leave them. I can't abandon them. I have ani mefaked alehem. I am like I have a duty of responsibility. I have to kind of be a commander to oversee them in a permanent kind of way. So that is it. That's our reading for today. It's 7:04. Oh gosh, I've really kind of scrunched down. And I hope you find this as interesting as I do, and as compelling, that it's a much more dramatic story. It's a much more emotional love story than the translations we get later on communicate. Let's see what's going on here. Some comments. It's a story about Christ, actually, says Jane Eyre. Well, many Christians interpret it that way. And she says, Aramaic Bible in plain English, quote, who appeared in glory, but they were speaking about his exodus, which was going to be fulfilled in Jerusalem, Luke 9:31. And she said, it's always lovely to hear the scriptures. Thank you for reading them. Nehemiah 8 and Ezekiel 34 are particularly lovely, relevant to your reading. Thank you. I will take a look. RMF says insanity, which from some people's point of view is no doubt the case. And that is it for comments. So we'll leave it there. Thank you for joining me. It's Naomi Wolf. This is the Geneva Bible, and Moses has just gotten up his courage, even though he's a bad speaker and shy or has a stammer, some other obstacle in speaking, gotten up his courage to tell the children of Israel that they need to leave Egypt, where they're enslaved but have enough to eat, and go into the desert where they are completely asked to put their faith and trust in God, who is revealing himself to them in all kinds of very dramatic and personal ways. All right, you can find more. You can find this on my Substack, Outspoken. We'll post it on our site, Daily Clout. And you can follow me there. And I am just hoping for peace all over the world tonight, hoping for innocent people all over the world to be safe, hoping for all children to be safe, and hoping that we can find our way, through these thickets of division, to remember that we are all one family. Thank you so much. Have a good night.